Welcome to the Writer Talks. Don't you agree that some of the best stories are penned by life? Well, often the novels, plays, or poems that we adore turn out to be the ones that capture these life experiences. My guest today, the former USSR born, UK based, award winning writer Olga Gibbs, is one such creative genius who captures life experiences in all her novels. Olga is a native of St. Petersburg, now living in the UK. She is a multi-genre author who can churn out high fantasy, dystopia, or a psychological thriller with equal ease. Her soon-to-be-released political dystopia, No Son of Mine, is a riveting, futuristic tale set in 2273, focused on the follies of OLP, a totalitarian regime. This Orwellian fiction highlights the story of a party worshipper who witnesses mass kidnapping of children. He needs to decide either to obey the party or to protect his child. Torn between political ideas and paternal love, both choices will destroy his life, as the party is desperate to cover its mistakes. There is no escape from the island or with complete control of the ordained liberating party. Engrossing, isn't it? It is due for release in October this year. Besides No Son of Mine, Olga passionately discusses her life in the former USSR, her work as a mental health specialist for adolescents and young people, as well as her being a creative writing coach and mentor. So let's dive in and listen to Olga's journey as a writer that began as a guest columnist for a local newspaper at the age of 15. But before that, I would like to thank you, all my subscribers, and urge you to get more people on board so that we can continue to engage in such rewarding literary interactions with brilliant writers from across the world. I have made a minor change with regard to uploading videos of the Writer Talks. Instead of posting a video once every week, in order to retain the quality of these literary interactions, I will henceforth be posting a video once every fortnight. I look forward to your continued support. Please like, share, and subscribe to the Writer Talks. I do hope you enjoy watching me talk to the very engrossing British novelist Olga Gibbs. Until next time, stay inspired, believe in yourself, and smile. Ahoy! Ahoy! Welcome to the Writer Talks. Joining me is the award-winning writer, Russian-born, UK-based Olga Gibbs. Ahoy, Olga. Welcome to Writer Talks.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
How has the day been?
It's been okay. I've been busy with my writing. Did some writing, but mainly I've been preparing for the release of the No Child of Mine. So I've been still dealing with the cover designers today. I've been dealing with the wider distribution channels, and on the back of No Child of Mine scoring 9 out of 10 in the Book Life prize, I've been invited to participate in one of the elite program, which supposedly will help me to put my book into libraries.
So fantastic. Congratulations on that. Yeah, I read about that on Twitter yesterday. Congratulations. It's always lovely to be acknowledged, isn't it?
Oh yeah, of course. You as a writer, you can appreciate how hard it is, how much time, sweat, tears, energy will pour into that, and to be appreciated, it means the world. It suddenly makes it all worthwhile all this time.
Absolutely. In fact, I just finished my novel, and the last chapter, I think I went over it. I edited it some 8 times, and that's no exaggeration. So I completely understand, and we sweat over every word. So.
Of course, yeah, we're going back and forth. Is it right one? Oh, shouldn't I? And then you're trying to find that balance between not to be too pretentious and be every person. So anybody can pick up your story and read it. So they don't need the dictionary to translate what you're trying to say.
Absolutely. Now, how do you say good evening in Russian? Since you know Russian and you're Russian by birth.
Добрый вечер.
Добрый вечер. It sounds so exquisite. Sounds so wonderful, melodious.
I think it's quite nice language, and it's nice on the ear. I think so. but I'm biased, of course.
It's so vital to love our own language. It's absolutely
Yeah.
essential, I think. Now, I see that you have two undergrad degrees, one in management of social enterprise from St. Petersburg, and the other one is your business management undergrad degree from Chester University. Now, what motivated you to pick up a master's in creative writing? I know that you're pursuing your master's in creative writing now.
Um, I don't know. I thought maybe it's time to be serious about it, to pitch a flag and actually announce that I am writer. Husband of mine, he is very often saying, "Who you are, what you are, say it out loud." And there's me, like, I'm writer. Well, be bold about it. Put your flag out there and claim it, and claim that profession and that calling as yours. And I thought it's only logical that I will progress there, and not only to learn, but maybe at some point I would be able to teach as well. That would be
Wow,
nice. Because currently I am working as a supply school teacher.
all right.
So that educational environment is not new to me. It's quite familiar. It's quite comfortable. Besides, I've been working with some girls through the charities. I've been working with the girls who were at the risk of being excluded from the education, from mainstream education, and the girls who suffered a lot of in their life. There was domestic abuse, there was sexual abuse, there were involvement with gangs. So that kind of mothering and educator role is not new to me at all. So it's kind of one step at a time, one thought at a time, and it's kind of progressed into the creative writing masters, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Okay.
Right now, I'm not going to guarantee anything because it seems to be all my entire life. It seems to be very little planning, very little predictability in it. I am not seems to be following the suit of most of the people. I traveled across the globe. I was born in Moscow. Then, because of my father, he was a research professor for the agriculture. He was relocated to far east of Russia. We actually lived on the border with China. I could see Chinese people who used to wave to them. And then I moved again with my mother to St. Petersburg. Then I moved to UK. So God knows where I will end up or what I will end up doing soon. So yeah, right now it's that what it is. But I'm not claiming that it what will stay or what it will happen at the end. I don't know. We'll see where it will end up.
Yeah, I'm sure there is some divine writer up there with multiple plots and multiple narratives and writing beautiful stories.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I would love to meet one.
Right. Now, since you mentioned St. Petersburg, what's your earliest memory of the former USSR?
Earliest, that probably would be when we used to live in Blagoveshchensk, that town in Far East. It used to be closed town. Only people to go into that town, you had to have a special permission from internal police department, which will check who you are, what's the purpose of your visit, where are you going to stay, and so on and so forth, because it was a research facility. In essence, it was a research facility. It had plenty of the biological research, medical research, military research. We had quite strong and big, large military base just not far from St. Petersburg. So it was closed town, and I remember my grandparents that couldn't come to visit us for quite some time because it was so tight security. And I actually remember I used to fly every once a year for the summer. I used to fly across the country from far east of Russia to the Vologda, which is northern of Moscow. I used to fly there for the summer to spend summer with my grandparents.
Lovely. Lovely, and at the same time, a little sad, isn't it, that they couldn't visit you?
Yeah, it was quite tough to get there. You had to have a reason to go there, and even those visits of the family, they were strongly discouraged. And even though you had to, for somebody had to be high up to be allowed for his relatives to come, because it was that secretive.
My
Oh,
God.
hush, hush.
Right, right. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting what human beings are capable of.
Yeah.
We'll continue talking about your journey as a writer, but first let's dive into the rapid response section.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. As you know, there will be a series of questions with options. You will have to pick one of the options from the
Okay.
ones that I give you. All right.
Okay.
Okay, let's begin then. Uh, Between these two writers of dystopia, whom would you rather read? I obviously can see why I'm asking this question. I'm sure you can see that.
Yeah.
So, between these two writers, George Orwell and Margaret Atwood, whom would you choose to read?
Ooh, can't I pick both? I just
No,
can't
you
pick
have to
both,
choose
no?
one.
Okay, then I probably will pick Margaret Atwood purely for the fact that Orwell, he wrote about, okay, not about, but he had Soviet Russia, Stalin, Soviet Russia as his inspiration, and living through Soviet. I kind of feel like it's literally rehashing of my childhood, so to speak. Whereas she dives into something else, into something different, something I haven't
Right.
read about before. And at the same time, she's very interested in the women place within the society, which is very, very interesting to me too.
Right.
I do think that women not been given enough voice, enough freedom, enough stance in the current societies. Not even one, I said
Absolutely.
societies. And I think she's picking at that, and I applaud her to that. And for me, coming back to my upbringing, born and raised in USSR, I was surrounded by strong women from my birth. My grandmother, she fought in World War II. Then she was working in a railway station, same level as man. She was doing all the heavy work, heavy lifting. My mother, she was a deputy manager, and she was in charge of the trolley bus depot of the town, of this town, Blagoveschensk, where we used to live. So both women, they knew how to hold their own against men, and they had men underneath them. They were commanding men, and they were commanding respect, and they were strong, they were independent. And when I see current culture with women seen as the eye
Right.
candy, oh God, it
Right.
drives me absolutely crazy. And sometimes I sound like a broken record when I'm lecturing my girls on this, that women doesn't have to be that and do that, and there is much more to it. And in essence, by I know I heard this conversation and discussion so many times that women earn money through that. However, I think there is so much more women can do. That's not beginning, that's not the end, that's not all. There's much more freedom I feel for women to claim.
Absolutely, and it's so vital to be independent and to be strong-minded.
It is. Talking about independence, that's important. I cannot stress it enough. I saw my mother going through the divorce and able financially to support herself, to support me. I saw my grandmother once her husband, my grandfather, died. Well, he was murdered, but she was on her own and she was able to go and to raise her children. It's incredibly important. Financial independence, not independence in mind, but financial independence is extremely important for women. And when I see women sitting at home and resigning the earning and that potential to men. And it's very important to raise families, very important. But I feel if something to happen, they will find themselves very vulnerable.
Right.
That's the only point.
Absolutely. So true. Now, if given a choice and you are to choose one of these two places for your inspiration, would you visit the Volga River or the Thames?
Volga River, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I think that was a fairly simple, straightforward question. All right. Now, between opting for your book to be a Booker Prize winner or for it to being a bestseller, what would you choose?
Huh. That's a bit tricky one. I would probably go for the bestseller purely because it will give chance for the book to meet more readers, for that to get into more hands. And with this particular book, with this particular story, I feel that I wanted more people to read it and to understand what I was trying to say, to see the message behind it. And as much as the cover, there is a red star, which symbol of the USSR. It was not even inspired from the Soviet regime, from the Soviet country. Funny enough, the whole book was inspired by capitalism. It was inspired by UK, and the message is the of the farming lands. Right now, I've been reading for last few years. I've been reading how billionaires been acquiring farming lands at the crazy speed. And I've been hearing of all the developments of the what I call synthetic food, when they're creating foods in the lab, when they're playing with food. The food security is, I think, is extremely important. And as our climate changes, as it gets hotter, we already see what's happening. So I think the food security will become a cornerstone of a lot of trouble which will come across the globe soon. I think it will happen, and it will be coming for us all soon. People will simply find themselves short of food and water, and then there will be a lot of revolutions, there will be maybe terror, there will be displacements, and so on, maybe even wars. And I don't want to predict that far and that dramatic, but the food security, I think, is quite important. And that's what the book was in essence all about. And it was about capitalism, funny enough.
That I noticed. I actually noticed as I was reading that I could glean that.
Good. Good. Sometimes I'm trying not to be too obvious with my stories. None of my stories are obvious. And when you try not to be obvious, you trying for readers to understand what you're trying to say. At the same time, you're always worried if you showed enough or if you said enough without saying too much. If you found that balance, that perfect point of balance, whereas they follow themselves and they discovered it by themselves and for themselves, yet you put it there softly enough for them to discover.
Right. Fair enough. Now, if you had the chance to meet any one of these three writers over tea, whom would you choose to meet? Your choices would be Dostoevsky, William Shakespeare, or Agatha Christie. Between these three, whom would you choose?
Dostoevsky, always.
And what is it that you would ask him?
How he manages to, he understands the human nature so well.
Right.
He sees through and he understands how people work, how people think, how they feel, in what situation to predict them to do X, Y, and Z. He understands them like mother would understand a child. He reads people well and human nature so well, you would have expected that from the highly regarded psychologist or psychiatrist, not only one who read a lot but who observed a lot.
Sure.
And we're joking in Russia. All of the Russians who read and appreciate the classic literature, they're all divided into two camps: Tolstoy camps and Dostoevsky camps. It's like a simple divider. And when these discussions begin, especially if they're getting heated, when there's accusations start to fly, the first thing they ask, so what camp are you? Dostoevsky or Tolstoy? Which one? And then from that response, you know where you're going to go with that person. But for me, it's always Dostoevsky. However, I do love Agatha Christie. I have to say, I appreciate, first of all, she was I think, first woman who wrote detective stories.
Right.
If I'm correct.
Right.
And if I'm not correct, she was the first female who made mark with that. Actually, who took the male genre and she turned into something else and made it better. And I think for that alone, because she's a woman who played in the male's environment and winning throughout, that's why probably she would be one of the other.
Yeah, she was one of those people who broke that glass ceiling again in writing. So,
yeah,
right.
Exactly.
True. Now, if you had a limited amount of time and you were allowed to choose only one of these activities to watch any one of these activities, which one would you choose? The Russian ballet, or watching a performance at the Royal Opera House, or watching Wimbledon? Which would you choose?
Do you know what? All of them have their benefits, I have to say.
Absolutely.
If I can watch all of them on stage, that will be the best.
No, but you will have to choose one.
If I have to choose one, then it will be a ballet. Yeah. And I'm not even specific which troupe that will be. I just really appreciate ballet. A friend of mine, she used to dance for Mariinsky Theatre.
Wow.
And she used to give me the free tickets now and again, and it was best day. She's like, "Oh, do you mind? Do you want? We're just tickets floating about." I was, yeah, please. What time? Yeah, I'll be there. And I love ballet. It's and I know how much hard work goes into it.
True.
Yeah, because as I said, she was my friend, so I seen her feet in a home environment, and that after years and years of practice, while all the blisters crusted over and everything went as they're supposed to, so it wasn't bleeding anymore. But I saw the damage it did to her feet and the work it took to get to where she was. So no, I do respect them. They're working extremely hard.
Very true. And for the longest time throughout my childhood, I don't know why I had this idea. I thought all Russian women grew up doing the ballet.
Yeah, I know. I can imagine.
Now, okay, where would you rather choose to live? The Russian countryside or the English countryside?
Tricky. Really tricky. And I have to choose one. Yeah, I can't
choose one.
Because every of these options has its own perks,
right,
and has its downfalls. And I think for now, not maybe political stability, because I've been here in UK for the last 20 years almost.
Right.
So I can't even speak for the political or crime situation in Russia. That will be very unwise of me to comment on something on an environment in which I don't live. But if what I remember back in 90s, then it will be English countryside, purely for the safety, of the life.
All right.
But if we're talking about the beauty of the countryside, sorry, I have to say Russia.
All right. Final question in the rapid response. So, where would you, if you have to recommend either of these two places, either one of these two places, which one would it be? St. Petersburg or Moscow?
Oh, St. Petersburg. That was easy one.
All right.
That's easy one. St. Petersburg, hands down. We actually regard the Moscow, again, maybe it's St. Petersburg snobbery talking, but we St. Petersburg people, we regard ourselves as more refined, and the St. Petersburg seen as a cultural capital of Russia.
Right.
So we are rather proud of that. There are more museums, more theaters, more. You have more artists. Pretty much in every house, in every building, there will be a starving artist somewhere painting his paintings, writing his songs. And yeah, St. Petersburg, and then the culture life, nightlife, and buildings, architecture is phenomenal. You just walking down the street and you are already in the museum, just walking down the street. You don't even need to buy a ticket. You come out of your flat and here you are inside the museum. Easy.
Beautiful. All right. So I'm convinced. So St. Petersburg it is.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Thank you for being such a sport. Now, moving on. I read that you started writing as early as 15 years of age, and you already were a columnist for a local newspaper. You were writing a column dedicated to teenagers. How did that happen?
I think I was just lucky, but at the time when I was 15, our school and three or four more schools had a project they were running with a local university where senior lecturers were encouraged to give lectures to the school children on the topic of the writing of the Russian literature and so on and so forth. So from my class, it was me and two more girls who were recommended on this course. From other schools, there were more. And once a week, we would go I'd have to travel across the town into the different filial of this university, and we will go there and we'll sit there, and the lecturer will be talking about Russian literature, about creative writing. And at the end, after 1 year of listening, we were again, that project continued into the summer camp, which was like summer literature camp. And there I met other people, other children, other teenagers who were interested in writing, in literature, who were slightly older than me and who were already studying maybe in the first year at the university. One was studying journalism, one was studying creative writing, one was studying something else. But there I met a girl who actually was a junior editor at the local newspaper. And we started talking, one thing led to another, and she's like, would you mind, I'm a bit busy with things, just a column, once a week, I promise, not much, nothing taxing, just do something, once a week, about teenagers. You pretty much have a free reign. A topic which you feel and you think will benefit local teenagers or teenagers of this town. And so, yeah, that's how it began.
Interesting. All right. That's nice. Now, I can see that you started your journey as a writer in terms of being a published author with this Celestial book series. You have 4 books to your credit. You usually wrote about supernatural and fantasy. So, would you like to talk about what inspired you to take on this series, the Celestial book series?
Well, that's another thing where we were talking earlier, how I don't like to be obvious when I'm writing stories. And these books that came as a result of me working with girls who were currently in care, and who were abused, who were suffering traumas of their past, childhood traumas, who still going through something currently, and I was working with them, helping them through that. And at one point I just had a thought, you know what, these poor girls, they had nothing good out of humanity, not a single bit. They didn't see kindness, they didn't see love, they didn't experience any of that. And I was thinking, I wonder what if they were God suddenly made into that deity, I wonder what they do to all of us if they had chance. After getting that horrific beginning of life, what would they do? And that's kind of progress from there. And the main character, she is actually written as a collective character from all of the girls I worked with. She has post-traumatic stress disorder. She has anxieties. She has bipolar as a result of the abuse. She has schizophrenia and all of these mental health issues, which making her life so much harder on top of everything else environment she lives in, on top of this abuse that she's suffering daily. All of that's how I created her, and that from that point I wanted to make flawed character. I didn't plan it for this to be young adult book, but it ended up because it for audience I envisioned that to be teenagers, maybe girls who are going through something similar, who may be in care right now, who may be struggling through the difficult family situation, home situation, who may be locked into abusive relationship or whatever happening. I wanted just to give it to them. I wanted to give them that character who is like them, who is not perfect, who has all of these issues, yet she overcomes these issues, yet she stands against these issues, and she accepts herself, and she fights through that. She's not thrown in towel. She fights for everything that's hers, for her own life, for life of her sibling, for her love for her sibling, and yeah, she's a flawed character. And after I've been reading some of young adult stories, and it always struck me how packed and presented those characters are. They've been thrusted into something, and suddenly they pick up that weapon which been thrown at their feet, that sword, that arrow, or that gun, and they know how to handle it, where to run, who the baddies, how to slay them, and so on and so forth. And none of them flawed, genuinely, really flawed, like we all are. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so that was just inspired by the girls I worked with. It was a story for them. It was me saying to them that I see them, I hear them, and that's what I think they are. They are incredible, and they're powerful, and they're strong, and they can do it.
That's interesting. Now, how did this transition happen then from fantasy and supernatural to writing powerful political dystopian book like No Son of Mine, or your other dark psychological thriller, which is yet to be published, isn't it? The Placement. So how did this transition happen?
Do you know what? If you think if take a step back and think larger, fantasy and dystopian, it's speculative fiction. So here you are. It's under one umbrella, under the same umbrella. So I don't know how to write happy, fluffy stuff. I don't know how to write romances, nor do I read those. And it's always my stories. It's always the stories that I feel I need to tell. It's Placement, for example. I was fostering for a while, and Placement, it's a psychological thriller, yes, but it was experience based on mine, and it was what I observed, what I worked with, and my experiences too. So all of these stories, they have a message behind it, and as much as maybe genre-wise, some might say it's wild swing from the high fantasy where we see celestial beings, angels, and so on fighting the battles for survival, to dystopian thriller, but every time it's flawed characters, and at every story there is a message behind the story. There's always a message there. It's either psychological message or political message or societal, one of those. It's never just so let's write something.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that's what makes it so very powerful. That's what makes it so very intriguing, and it's precisely why I completely loved No Child of Mine. And I mean this as a compliment. I felt that I was reading Orwell all over again. There was such a strong overtures of Orwellian influence, particularly your references to the OLP regime, Ordained Liberating Party, when I was reading about particularly this, right, and the broadcasting service that you begin with, you open the novel with that. Right? So as I went through those bits, I felt a strong sense of Orwell. What was this? Would you like to comment on this?
I know it was not by design. I haven't read Orwell prior to beginning writing it. It's only afterwards when I finished it, when I put it aside. In Russia, in Soviet Union, Orwell, no, I wouldn't say he was outlawed, but he wasn't one which were encouraged to read.
Right.
We had a different
naturally, right?
Naturally, exactly.
Everyone talks about Stalinist regime.
Exactly. And once I came here, there were other authors I would rather pick up. So he kind of never came to on my radar, and I never really wanted to pick it up because for me, he would have been, for me, it's a person who didn't live that, didn't experience that, telling me, a person who lived through that and experienced that, how it was. Do you know what I mean? It was like, I don't know how it was. I don't need the passion of that.
Right.
So I never, ever read it. Never read him, never read 1984. Then that story was done. It was written. And somebody said, you know what, it's like 1984. I was like, what? And I had to pick up the book. I went to go to Wikipedia, actually read the plot. And first thing I read on the plot on the Wikipedia, it says he has this screen as well to view people. I was so gobsmacked right there because I'm thinking that was not intentional at all. However, I would like to point out he invented those screens as a tool of surveillance,
right,
to keep tabs on people, whereas I have put that screen as the way of means of isolating people.
Right.
Because as the story progresses, we are talking about society, isolated people, and how society is divided. And this isolation helps the leading party, the leading regime, to keep the control, because the isolation is key. So he used these screens as a surveillance tool. I use that as the keeping people isolated. Right. Because as I'll probably misquote somebody, but somebody said that one of us, it's easy to break, all of us fistful.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. When you come together, it's like making a fist, and there is power in that.
Yeah, exactly. So I won't be saying who said that, because I will misquote it, and but that's basically in essence. And I feel that people right now in society, in many countries, being very divided. They feel very happy within their small little homes. They feel happy, and they've got this misguided sense of safety.
Correct.
As we said earlier, this, when politics don't involve me, I'm not interested. I don't want to talk and don't want to get involved with politics. It's divisive, this and that. But at the end, it all will affect us. And no matter how much you're trying to avoid it, how much you're trying to hide from it, stick your head in the sand, it won't work in long run. And here, it was simply as a mean of propaganda, just like the screens in the USSR were. That was a propaganda tool, plain and simple. And as the mean of isolate people and keep them placid, keep them pliable, and keep them under control through that exclusion.
Right. Another thing that since we're talking about your novel, another thing that I noticed was your reference to Andrew Dawson's words: "The silence of the scared, apathetic, and compliant people is a reason for all evil in this world." Now, we have seen enough. Human history bears testimony to this, and we were discussing just a while ago how this is so true. Do you think this will ever change, or do we have any redemption, or this is going to continue like this?
I hate to be all doom and gloom, but I probably will be, because I think unfortunately that's a human nature. Every time something doesn't concern us personally, doesn't touches us personally, our life, our family, we all tend to brush it off, not pay attention to it. Only when it involves us, when it's making our life miserable, difficult, hard, only then we wake up. And unfortunately, I hate being so negative, yet I think it will be forever an issue which will probably allow some people, some controlling totalitarian regimes to blossom because of that. And I'm not only talking about totalitarian regime in terms of the North Korea, shall we say, but even in terms of the hardcore capitalism, like say oligarchy capitalism or corporations capitalism, when it's only profit matters, only profit will do. And yeah, I think every time when we are still on the good side of the ruling few, we feel that it's okay, life is not that bad. But once we fall from the grace, it's suddenly we realize what it was for the rest of the country.
Yeah, you're right. As bleak as it sounds, it seems to ring true, and we have enough historical evidence to back that.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. And history keeps repeating itself so ridiculously over and over again. And you'd think that we as a humanity would have learned from that, would have picked a page or two and said, you know what, look, repetition, time and time and time and time again. How about we'll actually break that cycle, and we'll be more responsible, not only for ourselves, but for the wider population, for wider country, for community, for the vulnerable, for the future generations that will come. But no, our, I think, human selfish streak is there, and I think it's hardwired in us. So yeah, I'm sort of being all negative, but no.
Right. You're positive about that. You're positive about this negative aspect.
Yeah.
All right. May I request you to read from your favorite section of the novel?
Okay. Let me know once we run out of time. Oh, by the way, I got this proof other day.
There's wow, child of mine, yeah.
I know, it's quite chunky. It turns out much bigger than I thought it would be.
But there is a great joy in holding on to a book physically, isn't it? No matter how many e-books, but
yeah, it does. It does makes it all worthwhile when you see what came at the end of it, and when you see that as an ebook, it's always, yeah, probably I have done it, but once you see it in print and you see these pages filled with your words, with your choice of your words, with your messages, and suddenly you think, well, maybe it's not that bad, maybe I actually done something decent here, maybe I done good work. But how about a bit of from chapter 3? That was a chapter of the parade.
Absolutely.
One of my early readers, beta reader, she's currently a PhD student, and she's studying dystopian literature and politology, and she actually read that, and she read voraciously in that genre. She read Kalakain, which was a Swedish author. That was on my to-read list, because she actually said it reminds her of Kalakain. And other big, obviously, Brave New World, Fahrenheit, 1984, so on and so forth. And she said that this portrayal of the propaganda march was the best she read. So I'm kind of holding it as a medal on my chest with a pride currently. So you tell me when I need to stop.
Sure, I will do that.
Thank you. In this part of the city, so close to Liberation Square, the crowd was denser. The tannoy boomed louder, vibrating from the ground up into the people's chest. The parade organizers from the city's enterprises and factories were easy to spot. Those men and women had perpetually red faces, strained veiny necks, and coarse voices, withered to an angry whisper thanks to the constant yelling over the last few hours. And of course, they wore blue and white armbands over their jackets with the crests of the ordained liberating party stitched onto them. I said by three. How hard is it? Are you bloody deaf? Can't you bloody count to 3? Keep the column tight. Stand right behind the citizen in front of you until you see his dandruff. Either to the side or too far. I said in front, not to the left or right. In front. Pull the banners tighter. Tighter! Smith, it ain't your mother's underpants, so quit flopping it. Do I give a shit that your arm's too short? Then hand it over to Jackson. When walking past the Liberated building, steps should be solid, decisive. March like you mean it. And remember, flags are high and waving, banners tight and straight, and when I start glory to our party, you sing with me and you don't save your throats. You can yell at your wifey some other time. Yes, you, Collins, you. I'm talking to you. If I see you mumbling, pull those throats like you mean it. Don't spare your voices. March, 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 march. Keep the beat. Lift your feet. Hazel, move your hand off of there. Judy didn't have a chance to see where Hazel's hand was. As with another tide of the bodies, she was pushed past the formed columns of the textile and cement factories, past and through an unorganized crowd of freshly arrived bodies towards the epicenter of the short crowd, where the wail of hundreds of petrified children ran with the volume of the tannoy. Beth, I'm here, Judy called, waving her arm above the young crowd. The young woman carrying cozy and homely form spun to the call, her blonde hair flying with her turn. She took rushed steps towards Judy, dragging a screaming toddler with her. Oh, Judy, am I happy to see you? Beth's face was red and sweaty, her lips quivering. Judy looked past her. 5 more young women stood amongst the vast sea of hundreds of screaming young children who stood with their heads drawn up and their mouths open wide mid-wail like baby birds. Is everything okay? But really Judy wanted to ask what is wrong with the children and what did the disciplinarians do to bring that behavior to the forefront in them, in children who from babies knew not to make noise, not to cry or to fuss, who knew that no one would come, and if someone came, they'd be ignored. Those babies were raised on a diet of the strict discipline and deprivation of attention, with a ratio of 1 disciplinarian to 30, sometimes 40 babies. Besides, these children were attending the Liberation Day parade not for the first time, and were well aware of the expectations placed on them.
Yes, okay. That's a perfect place to stop.
Okay,
Keeps us on the edge. Brilliant.
I like the edge. My favorite place. I like cliffhangers.
Absolutely, and this is again. The imagery is so powerful. As you were reading, I mean, I could actually visualize the whole thing, and it was the same when I was reading this particular section in chapter 3.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's a brilliant compliment. Thank you. I'm very pleased. Thank you.
Now, it is set in a futuristic time, 2273, if I remember right. And how long did this take for you to complete No Child of Mine?
Do you know what? I am afraid I'm always feeling uncomfortable because I see these people who writing a story or writing a novel for 10 years, and that when I am kind of not sure how to answer if I should tell the truth or not, or if I should lie, when somebody asks me how long did it take you to write that, I'll tell you the truth. But first draft of No Child of Mine took me 40 days.
Wow.
I
I was prepared to listen to you a couple of months. 40 days. Amazing.
I don't know to this day. Okay, full disclosure, I don't know how that happened, but it's happened. As I said, I had a story inside of me, and I had a story to tell. I knew the players. I knew what I wanted to do with them. I knew the environment I wanted to place them in, and it all just followed. And I just wanted to see how his love for the party, his love for the country, will change about this metamorphosis of his feelings, of his where his love will lie. Will he choose his country, his party, or will he choose his child? And that was what actually drove me to see, to inspect that love, that belief into the regime, and see how that will be offset against the parental love. And I would like to add actually that when I was looking after I finished that book, that's another reason why I didn't read anything of that prior, because it took so only 40 days to write. But when I was inspecting the dystopian literature,
right,
I have realized that there is a gap of the literature which examines parental love and sense of duty and relationship of the parent and the child within the totalitarian regime, within the dystopian society. Talking about 1984, we're talking about lover, boy and a girl.
Right.
In other books, similar, or it was just a story of a person who goes through that. Here, we're talking solely about parental love, and we're trying to offset that parental love against that regime. But I thought it would be too easy if I would have made main character Judy, the one who didn't love the party, who was the orphan or child of opponents and dissidents, and that would have been too on the nose. Of course, she would have picked her child, but I wanted to pick somebody who was truly passionate about greater good, about what party did, how it improved the country, what message it's been given to the world, to its own citizens, and then place that question. And by no means I'm trying to compare myself to Dostoevsky. No. However, that is the main question that Dostoevsky had in his Crime and Punishment. Is it okay to kill a bad person? And all the moral dilemmas that come from that. You put a person who is not killer, who is quite soft, who is vulnerable, you put him into that position, make him to do that act, and then watch what will happen to him. If you will put cold-blooded killer and then see the progression of moral dilemmas that he will face, the internal struggle, the self-hate, the self-loathing, it wouldn't be much of the emotional struggle. It will be within the realm of behavior. Whereas here, you take in from one opposite side of the scale, you swing in all the way to other side, and you see how they will behave there, what the response will be, what their moral will say, what their heart will tell them.
Correct. Yeah, you have a strong point there, and that's very, very, very valid. It's only with people who have certain principles, and when you break those, when you go against that, comes the moral dilemma, and as you said, the plethora of emotions that one goes through. Now, since you were talking about characterization, who is your favorite character in the novel? I mean, in the sense, the one whom you identify with.
Oh, I don't know. I probably will have to take main character, and I can I feel, I wouldn't say it's written from me, but I think that strong sense of right and wrong with which he was raised with, him, his view of the world, his view of his party, his view of the future, his belief in his party, that strong belief, and yes, that core central of right and wrong. I can sympathize with that. I personally very much the same, and I understand him. I understand his process of thinking, how he felt. Maybe that's why it was fairly, I'm not saying easy, but fairly easy to write him and write his internal struggle when he had to betray his party,
Right.
something, the institution to which he contributed his entire life. 40 years of his life he contributed to that institution because he believed in, truly believed it. And then he had to betray it to choose his child. And that's another thing, whereas where this socialist thinking coming in, because we as a socialist, we believe that we need to build the society good for the many, not for the few, not for the one, but for most. And here he had to go against his socialist principles and choose one, only one, and leave the rest behind. Leave the rest to die, to fall, to crumble, and he chose one. And of course, some people might say it's easy because it's parents. You as a parent, you hardwired to choose your child. No, not necessarily. I've seen plenty of parents who won't do even minimum requirements of parental love, let alone actually breaking themselves and breaking themselves of what they are and who they are in order to save their child. So yeah, I hope that came across. But
yeah, it did. All right, fair enough. Let's talk about your psychological thriller that's also in the pipeline, The Placement. When is this expected, and what inspired you to write The Placement?
placement, I don't know when that will be ready because it was a bit of tight going. But that was inspired by my fostering, because I've done a few years of fostering. I've been foster parent, and that was basically on the back of it. I'm actually expecting a lot of backlash from the story when it will be published. But again, we discussed. I'm not writing anything. I don't seems to conform to the forms of the art expected. So I'm not expecting anything less there. I don't know. I would imagine few years, because so happens that this no child of mine, it's finding as a progression that the story, as much as story finished, it's a standalone book, and the story of the main character, of the man who has to choose between his party and his child, is finished, concluded. That's the end. But I found myself questioning and wondering what if there, and what happens to there. One of the particular stories I just I'm reading, not just started, but I'm writing, is about one of the guys who, you didn't read that far, but there's a scene in the middle of the book where all the children being put into the trucks and taken away, removed from their parents, of the fear of that disease which caused by the synthetic food, because it's synthetic food poisoning in essence. But these children being removed from their parents and taken away, and they've been guarded by those internal police officers, state security officers. And at some point, once I finished this No Child of Mine, I was thinking, I wonder what a man who been assigned to that task what he would feel, what what will happen to him once he need to point a gun to the bunch of helpless young crying children. Would he fire? Would he actually follow every order, and how bad these orders could be, and would he at any point throw his rifle down and say, no, I'm not shooting those children, no, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, I'm not doing X, Y, and Z? Will they ever? Or we're again talking about complacency, compliant people, and complacency in the way they live their lives.
Sure.
And I'm trying to investigate at which point we will say no more. Does it come only when our personal lives involved, like our children, or would it happen at some level before that, when we'll see wider picture and we realize what's happening, and how far does it need to go, how bad does it need to be for us to wake up? So yeah, that's still going. And I think it will be 2 more books out of that, but they all stand alone. They're just simply investigating different people within that, with that situation that just came.
Moving on now, who is your most trusted critic?
I have few, but I think the one who I know will say it gently, yet always will tell me truth and say it as it is. It's my husband. As much as I know that he will be of course he won't try to hurt me, but I know that he will say it as it is. So
right.
if there is any questions, I'm always asking him first before if I need to look for second opinion, but usually it's just
right.
my end with him.
No, we need that, isn't it? That constructive, honest criticism one does need. It's invaluable.
We do, absolutely. Especially as a writer, we need proactively find somebody who can give us straight as it is, and not necessarily in terms of you. I don't know if you came across it as a writer yourself. When you ask a writer for the feedback, sometimes you get feedback on your writing style rather than on the plot itself.
Absolutely, yeah, very true.
Yeah, and sometimes you want it on the plot. You want to see how that story will be received by readers, and how it will be, how it's seen as a whole. And yes, I have plenty of writers friends, and I have 2 very good friends. One is Cheryl Butler. She helps me a lot. She is a writer too, and her command of language is phenomenal. She's very good at her job, at what she does, and I know I can trust her in that. And so when there's a question about the way to write it, the way to present it, I always come to her. What would you reckon? This, that, no, yes, but sometimes you just want to answer on a wider picture.
Right.
And you want just somebody take it into consideration, because and again, there's another thing to keep in mind as a writer. I feel when giving feedback to another writers on the writing style, that our writing styles, they're phenomenally different.
Correct.
And there is not right or wrong. It's just different. Somebody prefers and writes in literary fiction. The purple prose is so eloquent and so magical and poetic, yet they might struggle to deliver the point and to actually come to the point of what they're trying to say. Yet the language command, the way it's written, it's so tantalizing, so beautiful. Yet some will write in very dry, very
staccato sentences, and
yes, almost like a firing a gun. Shot goes directly where it needs to go, Bam, plain, simple. We only doing what's need to be done. We're only giving as much information as need to be given. No more talking, no more fluffy, no more looking at the stars and describing how beautifully they twinkle at the night. But that's what I think is important when we're giving feedback to fellow writers, is to keep in mind that the writing style is different, and there's nothing wrong with not connecting with style or not understanding the style, but it does not make the style or writing bad or wrong. And I think sometimes that can be forgotten among this need to advise, to improve, to give feedback, and to help. Sometimes we're so eager to help, we want to put ourselves and project ourselves on somebody else, and it's important to take a step back.
True, absolutely. There is a risk of that, and it's to hold back that. Yeah, you're right. And any special message to viewers of the Writer Talks?
I don't know. Keep on writing, I guess. We only get better by reading a lot and writing a lot. I'd imagine first drafts are always wonky, and if you have a story inside you that you feel you need to share with the world, just go for it. If you need a help, reach out, look for help. Professional help, just simple support of your family. If you need help, go and get it. But keep writing, and even if the first draft, second draft, even if fifth draft looks all raw and wonky and you don't feel it, just keep it. At the end, it will be perfect. It will be you, and because it's honest, because you pour yourself into it, it will be you, and it will be your gift to the world. And I think we all need to share our stories to make sure that our world sees all of us, all colors of us, all experiences of us, because we shouldn't be all black and white. It's many more different colors and shades within. And I think these stories shared, that what helps us to understand the rest of us as a humanity.
Absolutely, and that authentic voice is so very crucial.
I agree. This authentic voice, perfect. That's what I'm always looking for when I'm picking up the book. I want personal experiences, and I want people write about what they overcame. And if I'm reading about a refugee, I so much would appreciate if a refugee wrote it. And I would like agents and other publicists and literary publishing industry professionals look for more of these authentic voices. And even if writing is raw, even if writing needs work, we can get there. Eventually, we can get there. But I really would like to see more of these honest, raw stories from the source, from the first-hand accounts.
Absolutely. Right. Thank you so much for that, and all the very best for No Son of Mine. I'm sure it will do exceedingly well, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.